Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm your host, Diane Gibbs, and I am joined by my friend, fourth time appearance on Design Recharge. That's right, 8 now, I guess, right? If you double it up. Yeah. So anyway, super excited to have Jason Carne. If you aren't familiar, he's going to give us a little bit of background, but he is wicked talented and a great craftsman. A great letterer, great designer, and a business person. Your business has really changed. So I'm real excited. And I see Doc Reed's here, and I've got my Maker's Gonna Make, and you can't really see it because it's in my shirt, but I got his, this was January's t-shirt. They're doing the lettering. Mitch Shepard from Humbly Made. So representing. Okay, back to you, Jason. Tell us about just any lettering I like to promote. Tell us about your background.
Yeah. So I've been doing lettering probably about only about like 3 or 4 years now, but I've been doing, I was thinking about it the other day, and I've been doing design since about 2006. So it's almost 10 years now. It is 10 years now, I guess, 2016. But most of it was like a lot of web layouts and just graphics for like album covers and show flyers and things like that for a long time. I mean, most of what I was doing when I started was like MySpace layouts for bands and stuff back in the day, when that was just, the place for musicians. Now it's, as dead as it can be. But after that died, I went into doing like band merch, t-shirts, posters, all sorts of different stuff for concerts and things like that. And I eventually fell more in love with like the logos and the lettering that was on the album art than the actual illustrations and the pictures that I was doing. And I found a lot of the time I couldn't get what I wanted out of a pre-existing font, so I'd start drawing my letters to make it fit the designs better. And over time, I got more and more in depth in that and kind of completely fell out of illustration and everything else. I'm trying to bring that back into my work, but I feel like I need to step up my illustration game before I put it into commission pieces. I feel like I've overlapped my ability there by like a good amount with the lettering. So now I feel like it's not good enough to be with the lettering. So I always like try to either commission like other illustrators or I think are better or good enough at that kind of stuff and combine it with my lettering now. But maybe one day I'll do it all on my own. We'll see.
Well, I think it's good. At least you're trying, you're working on that. And it is something, I tell people this all the time. If you're not working on that craft, you're going to lose it. It's like going to the gym. You don't just go once and you're like, hey, I'm doing good for the year. Yeah. Like you have to keep going. It's a muscle and it's a habit that you have to keep up with. So I'm glad because I have seen some of your illustrations. I think they're terrific. So keep it up. And I said craft.
Yeah. I think I always go back to this one quote. I forget who said it, but they said comparison is the thief of joy. So you're seeing all these people on Instagram and Dribble and Behance that are outrageously talented, the best in the world, best in the industry. And you're like, man, my stuff's not even close. Like it's not there. So you think like, okay, so it isn't as good as all these people that are industry leaders and the ones that are setting the standard and raising the bar. So you're kind of embarrassed or ashamed to put out your stuff when you see it sitting next to people like those. So I think that it's good to put out what you're doing for people to see the progress that you're making. But I think you also have to recognize your talents and your strengths and what your weaknesses are. And, if for me, lettering is my strong suit. So I kind of stick with that and stick with posting that. And if I do an illustration that I really enjoy, I will post it. But for the most part, I think that they're just not to the level of my lettering and that they shouldn't really be the focal point of my portfolio or anything yet.
That's good way to be. And it's also, you'll know when, because you do have a high level, but you also keep up with other people in the industry. So you can kind of, it is kind of the stealer when all you are doing is comparing, but at some point you have to just post and get better.
Right.
Do you think, I know one of my students tagged you in a tweet this morning, and he tagged me too, but it was like an A, and I was like, oh, good job, Jared. Just because, so does that happen to you a lot? I know this isn't one of my questions, but what do you do with people like that?
People that just reach out or try to show me things. I don't think I saw that because Twitter is something I'm almost never on. like the way I use Twitter is that I'll post something from Instagram and just send it through automatically to Twitter. Mm-hmm. But I almost never log into Twitter unless I'm doing something for like Carmel and I'm trying to hit each audience for like a product release or something like that. Right. So I'll have to go back and see what he sent me. But
yeah. But so then maybe on Instagram or something, somebody reaches out to you.
Yeah. I always love seeing people reach out. I mean, it's great that they think that something that I'm doing is inspiring or something that wants to make them get into the business or the craft. And I think that's really cool. Because it's always hard to see yourself as somebody who's inspiring or promoting people to do something like that. It just feels weird to think about. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it's just, as a designer and an artist, we're always our own worst critics. So when we're looking at our work, we're like, it's good, but it's not great, but to somebody else, it may be. Like, I was Skyping with Dave Smith. I'm sure a lot of people know him. He's a glass artist and gilder and embosser, and he does all that ridiculously beautiful work in the UK. And I was telling him, I was like, I don't think you understand like how revered you are by the design and like the art community. Like, you are one of the best there is in the world, and not to like blow smoke up your ass or anything, but you're amazing. Yeah. Like, you really are. Like, you're one of the best living artists. That's what I said. And he was like, wow, that's really amazing that you would think that. He's like, I don't really feel that way. And I was like, well, you really are. Like, you're on a totally different plane than most people. And he just doesn't even realize it. So I think there's all different levels to that. Like, like, I don't realize that I'm maybe inspiring other people with my work. I think I'm just doing the best I can and just putting stuff out there that I think looks cool. And it's just awesome that other people are kind of following along and also enjoying what I do.
Right. Well, and I think that that's one of your great talents or strengths, I guess, is your humility. But I think that that's one thing I like to have people on who are humble, who actually can be like, wow, you think that what I'm doing is good? Or like, I know Scotty Russell, he totally looks up to you, and he said, you're crazy talented. I've been a big fan for a long time. And I think a lot of other people, but it's also, those are people that you might also really enjoy their work and really get inspired by. And so now it's like, now you and Dave Smith are friends. I mean, if you're Skyping, you must be friends.
Yeah, I'd consider Dave a friend. We met at the Letterheads meet in Cincinnati last year, and that was one of the coolest things I've ever been to. It was the 40th anniversary meet from when they all started this a long time ago. Like Noel Weber, Mark Otis, a couple of like these sign making legends started this, and Noel stood up and gave a speech at the end of it, Noel Weber, and he's one of the guys that's selling with us at Carmel now. I don't know if you've seen some of his work, but he's an incredible artist as well. And Dave was actually sending him letters in the 80s, like, how do you do this? And, I'd like to learn this from you and everything. So in a way, Dave was like Noel's student and his like protege, I guess. And, he's become, just as good as Noel, I think, at this point. And there are these two master craftsmen who kind of like bounced ideas off of each other and just came to learn all these techniques that almost nobody even knows at this point, which is really cool to see. So all these like older sign guys that are like starting to collaborate with Carmel, it's really cool because we're like bridging the gap between like the modern designers using stuff for packaging and labels and these older guys that use the stuff that specifically for signage, but they kind of have a lot of crossover there, which is really nice.
Oh yeah, for sure. So to me, that's one of the best things about Carmel. So let's go ahead and dig into Carmel. How you really have, so you really kind of have a lot of different businesses under maybe one business, maybe a few businesses, but you have your design business, and then which you do lettering and other design work. And then you have Lettering Library, which is a paid monthly subscription kind of thing, which kind of feeds in from your love of antiquing and hunting for different beautiful type specimens. And then you've started Carmel Type, which you had done Skyward. That was your first one, right?
Yeah, that was the first one.
So then, and that was maybe a year ago?
Yeah, about a year and a half, maybe it's the latest. I think you're right. Probably about a year ago.
So there's a delay. Like I see you talking after. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Am I on normal?
It's a little bit delayed. It's like watching a movie on the internet.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, a little bit after the. Yeah.
I'm just going to listen and make sure that I get it. So, okay. So it's really kind of become all these other things. So how has designing typefaces really changed your business model? And did it start right after Carmel? I mean, not after Carmel, after Skyward, or really before or during?
Carmel started a decent amount after Skyward was launched. Skyward came out, and then I think there was this kind of lull in my interest of designing more typefaces because we created this custom site that was just for Skyward. So we had a platform to really show all these images on it. We commissioned, or we didn't commission people, but we had some of our designer friends create specimen images for it. Like we had Damian King and we had Steve Wolf and a whole bunch of other people create all these awesome pictures for it. And we put it up and it didn't sell that much. It sold a little bit, but we were like,
Me?
Yeah, you were the first one.
I thought I was number 3.
Well, you might have been, but I think we did a couple test purchases of our own to make sure it was working first. I think we were 1 and 2.
Oh, sweet.
Pathetic to say that we were our own first customer, but yeah. So we didn't really have this platform where people were coming specifically to a place to buy fonts.
Right.
Like Drew is selling fonts on his own website, but they're coming to his site to look at his portfolio. They want to see his lettering work and his branding and all that stuff. And that was kind of just like a secondary side element to his website. So I think it was about 6 months down the line, which was maybe about 6 months ago now too. I started Railroad Company and I was making all these letters and I was like, hey, let's do this again. It was kind of a fun process of me handing off the alphabet to you and you doing all the back end work and the development where you're doing kerning pairs and all that kind of stuff. And so we did that and I was like, why don't we just do this? I was like, why don't we just take off of our freelance career for like a month, build out the website, get all these fonts up. I know you have a ton already sitting there. I was like, let's just do it. And he was like, yeah, sure. And I even had the name ready. And we built the website in like a week. We did it really quick. And we went with Squarespace at first, which I would advise going against if you're doing any kind of e-commerce. Great portfolio site, but it's not good for business. There's not enough there in like the sales reports or getting other users to log in and see their stuff. And there's not enough plugins for it to work in the commerce side of things. But yeah, so it was a little while after Skyward when we really got interested in working together on a type foundry.
So is this like a LLC kind of thing that you guys did together, or is this just a regular company?
Well, right now we're operating under Drew's company called Just Lucky. So he's handling everything from the business side at the moment. But now that we're growing and we're having more people come on board and everything, that we're going to have to come up with some kind of like partnership agreement to where we're officially like an LLC or something along those lines.
So, okay. So that's part of that business model. So your stuff with Lettering Library, and then you have your Jason Carne stuff.
Yeah, that's just all under me. Yeah, Lettering Library and my personal freelance stuff.
And then Carmel at some point will be its own kind of thing. I just always think
it'll be its own entity, so it's not all in his possession or all in my possession.
Right.
Partnership is something that's kind of new to me. I mean, I've always gone solo for the last 10 years of doing this. I never had anybody else working with me.
Right.
So it's a kind of new experience, but he's definitely the right guy to do it with because he has the same mindset and attitude that I do for growing and learning and making sure that what you're putting out is the best thing you can put out. Like there's been like times where like we both wanted to release things of our own and we both like stopped ourselves and waited like another week or two, maybe a month to make sure that everything is like really dialed in. Like we could release it. It's good as it is. And we could like start making money on this, but we don't want to put it out and have anything be substandard or subpar. We just want to be like the upper echelon or like the place you think of when you're thinking of really beautiful and great display type.
So how did you find Drew and how did you approach Drew Because he wasn't somebody you knew before.
No. Yeah. Well, I just knew him through Dribbble and Behance. I've seen his work around, and he has a fairly large following. I think he has over 20,000 followers on Instagram, and he's got over 10,000 on Dribbble. I mean, so a lot of people have come into contact with his work, even if they don't know it. I'm sure if you've seen some of his stuff, you'll probably have recognized it from around the internet. And I thought of him at the time as somebody that's like in league with like John Contino and Jessica Hish, and I thought he was like one of the big shots of the younger generation. And I still think that he's kind of in that category. He's an excellent artist. And he's one of the only people I knew that was doing their own fonts at the time. I knew Maddox because that's what even got the gears working in my head to create my own font, is when I went to his workshop at Creative South. And yeah. Were you in that workshop too?
No, I wish I had.
Yeah.
But no.
But he brought up all these points about type, like all these little subtle nuances about lettering that I had never really considered. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And there's a lot more to it than you think. So when I got to making my own stuff, you have to, it's a bigger undertaking than you think. It's a longer, more arduous process than most people think it is. Especially like with Skyward, when I started that, it was just the uppercase and then the numbers and basic punctuation. I was like, yeah, I guess I'll do lowercase too. Why not? I've come this far. So I did lowercase, and then I'm like, I need all those special characters too, like the @ sign and the pound symbol and the currency. And I was like, all right, well, I did all that. I might as well do accents now. And then there's a couple hundred accented characters. And then I did like an inline version, a serifed version. I just kept going and going and going. And now there's 12 different varieties of that single font, which is a couple thousand glyphs, I'm sure, at this point.
But it takes a lot of time to do something like that. So was this just something you were like taking off and you were going to just work on this every day for so many hours? Or was this something that you said, I'm going to work on this on Fridays or?
Well, with Skyward, I really didn't even have a plan. I did about 10 to 15 of the letters for a logo for a band called Smashing Satellites. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this would make a cool font if it was to be developed as a, full alphabet. So one day I went back in and I started creating the remaining letters of the stuff that I hadn't completed yet. And I finished A through Z, and I was like, okay, this is nice, but it's just vectors. It's not a font. It's not something somebody else can use. So I was like, it's kind of useless. So I need to find somebody who can take over now and develop it, because I had no idea how to do that. I didn't even know what the programs were. I didn't know about Font Lab or RoboFont or Glyphs or anything like that. But yeah, I saw that Drew was making his own, and I decided to just kind of reach out and cold call him and be like, are you interested in doing this? And he was. So I was really glad
Did you just say, hey, I'm Jason Carne and I make really cool letters. Can you make my font for me?
No, I don't think it was it was that simple of a message. I always tend to elaborate and type really long emails when something really concise probably could have done the point just as much justice.
But anyway, so he responded back.
Yeah, he thought the font looked really cool. Yeah, he messaged me back, I think even like an hour or two later. It wasn't like it was like a week later or something like that. So it seemed like he was actually really interested, and I sent him over all the vectors, and I think he had it like a roughed in alphabet ready within like a couple days. And I was like, wow, this is exciting. This is something that maybe we can sell like in a week or two. And then I started doing all the inline versions and the serifs and all that stuff, and it ended up taking a lot longer. But I think it was worth the while. It's our biggest, most extensive typeface at the moment, being that it has 12 different styles. But we plan on building out all sorts of different weights and styles on other fonts too. Like with Motor City, I have 3 or 4 ideas that I want to work with on that one as well.
All right. So a little bit about the name. So, I wasn't sure if it was Caramel or Carmel or Caramel without one of the A's is missing.
Yeah.
I know. So tell me about the way you came up with Carmel.
Yeah, Carmel it's really simple, actually. It's just both of our last names, the first half of each of our last names. So it's Carne and Melton. So Carmel is how we came up with that. And I even have like a little snarky FAQ thing on our webpage, like, do you know you spelled caramel wrong? And I'm like, yes, it's not supposed to be caramel. So, because I've had a couple people ask me that, like, why don't you spell it with the A? Well, it's not meant to be. And there's kind of like a double meaning there too, because when I took Melissa to California and we got engaged last year, we went to Carmel by the Sea. That's where we stayed. That was a beautiful place. That was probably the best vacation I've ever been on. I love that place. So it's kind of something that reminds me of a really good time in my life and a good place. So that was the secondary meaning behind it.
Those are all good. Okay, so I do think it's interesting because you've been, and I even think that like you kind of toyed with going to work for Sevenly and you were like, no, I think I just want to work on my own, you know, when they were like hiring a bunch of people a couple of years ago. And so you doing these kind of collaborations, I think it's really, you're now this kind of force for these other letterers to really get a design made, or kind of or like these old sign painters. Now you're kind of giving them another way to kind of supplement their income or do something else with something that they love that maybe was dying out to some extent.
Yeah, it's something I've really started to enjoy, was working with other people and seeing what they have to offer and how I can help them out with, you know, what their projects are too. We didn't even consider bringing other vendors on to sell with us in the beginning. It was just going to be Drew and I making our fonts and selling what we want to do. But before we even launched the website, Noel Weber, Gary Godby, and a couple other people emailed me, and they were like, hey, we have all these fonts that we've made. We were on a couple different websites, but they're not working, or, you know, we kind of had a falling out with the owners of other ones, and we want to find a new place and a new home for our stuff. Would you be interested in putting our work? And yeah, of course, you know, like these people are people that I really look up to and that I think are kind of, you know, like legends of their trade and their industry. I mean, Gary Godby, he was, you know, one of the sign makers at Disney for, you know, almost 30 years at this point. I mean, that's incredible to have somebody like that come to you and want to be part of your team. And then, you know, to have Noel and Dave and all these guys coming on too. And Jerry Berg's been another great collaborator with us too. And we have a couple other younger guys that hopefully will be getting involved soon. One of the guys is in the chat right now. I don't know if he wants to. Yeah, maybe you'll know by the winky face there. Okay. Yeah, Scott's hopefully doing something with us pretty soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'll be good to see. So I think, but I really like that. Do you think that that's helped you, pushed you even as designing letters, or do you think, or typefaces, just by having those other people kind of in that same crew and not just you and Drew? Yeah. When you have guys like Noel and Gary and Jerry, like all contributing too, you really feel like you need to kind of step your game up if you're going to be sharing the stage with people like that, so to speak. Oh yeah. Okay, sorry. My husband's sick, and so he was texting me.
Okay, all good.
Okay, so all right. We talked about this on our test, and I think that this is really interesting for people who are in the same sort of spot as you, who are interested in maybe making something, but maybe don't have the equipment or don't want to spend the time, because it does really take a big time commitment to make all these things, right? And I don't really know what would happen. They have all these things. They have every glyph. They have do they come to you with something like that, or they come with like a basis?
There's kind of a range with that. There's some people who will come to us with like just uppercase numbers, no punctuation, no lowercase, no accents, anything like that. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. We're trying to be a little more inclusive, and we're trying to have it so people can buy it from other countries and have it work with their languages. We haven't got into language support for like Russian glyphs or, like Vietnamese or Thai characters or Chinese characters or anything like that. It's just not something that we understand well enough to develop those characters. Same with like Greek letters and things like that. We just don't understand those well enough to portray them accurately, I think, yet. And the fact that these are display faces, and a lot of them are kind of reminiscent of either old American or European sign writing typefaces. Maybe it would almost seem weird in other cultures to have that kind of aesthetic.
Right.
Where, like with Motor City, that one is supposed to emulate a look of old Detroit letters. So for it to have, kind of like Vietnamese or Cyrillic characters, like it might seem weird because it's not ever an aesthetic that those cultures really used in there.
So let me put up an image so that they can see what you're talking about. I love this typeface, and then it's going to hit on what our next question is. So if you you'll see in the chat a little image will pop up, and you can click it and then make it bigger, just so you know, so you can see what he's talking about with Motor City. Right? Can you see it?
Yeah, there's a link there. It looks like it pops up in a different tab. I don't know if there's a...
Anyway, so, okay, you go through this, you're making these, and you sold this one, I think, was $30?
Yes, yeah, that one was $30.
I mean, and man, I jumped on that one like a gun. I was like, this is going to be, I don't know, like a gun. That doesn't even make sense. Like a pogo stick, maybe. But that one, I mean, it's really affordable. I know what I'm going to use it for. And so I love your work. So how do you come up with your prices? Because I remember Skyward was a little bit more expensive, but it did have a lot of stuff with it. So what's the sweet spot? Because I looked on the site and there's some that are $49, and then there's some that are in the 30s. So is there a sweet spot?
Yeah, that's something we're still experimenting with and trying to figure out what works best for our audience. Mm-hmm. The most people that come to our site are actually doing so from Dribbble. That's by far the biggest referrer. So every time we post there, we get like 70% of our traffic from that day is that website. So that's kind of the audience we're pitching to, is other graphic designers that want to use the stuff on their work. And it seems that a lot of them are more comfortable with spending between like 30 and 50 than they are upwards of that. At least just because I think that with our fonts, we don't have very full families like some of these other like text faces would.
Sure.
Look at like Jonathan Heffler stuff. Yeah, like Gotham or Knockout, where they have like 100 different fonts in their family. Right. That's not something that, we've really explored yet. And I don't even know if we will to that extent.
Right.
But I think people have a harder time justifying any more than $50 for a single font.
Right.
Something that won't have all these different weights and variations to it.
Well, and I don't know who makes this. Is so terrible that I should have probably looked this up. But Benton Sands, do you know that typeface? It's the
I don't think so.
Small Saturday, that the badge that was created for Shop Small Saturday, like for the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
No, I don't think I've seen that. Let me
look Brian just popped it up. Thank you, Brian. He is like the best. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
So
they have it on Font Bureau. Yeah, 80 styles. Wow.
$40 for each face. And I just that's when I'll be like, oh, this month is a Benton Sands month. But it is such a good face, but it is expensive to buy the whole thing, And so,
absolutely.
But again, it is a face, but I don't know if it's really text. Like, I'm still using it as display. Anyway, now I'm just going on.
Kind of like straddling that line there between display and text. Like it could be used as like a text face too, because it's just so cleanly developed, I guess. But look at like Tobias Frere Jones. He just launched his first one with his solo, that Mallory one. Did you see that? And I think it's like $1,500 for the whole family. And that's like a lot of money to drop on a typeface. But I mean, I think his name kind of carries a lot more weight than almost anybody in the industry. And, he's not looking for designers like you or I to buy that kind of stuff. I think he's looking for like agencies and people that are going to be using this, for huge, large projects.
Absolutely.
Where that's just like a drop in the bucket for them.
Well, and it's also, you got to think of something that can't be really trendy. It has to kind of expand its lifetime. And so I think with you kind of looking at some older faces, it gives it a little bit more life. I know Maddox does that too. I mean, sometimes it is going to be like a trendy kind of thing, but then there is going to be these faces that, because they're based off of something old or vintage, it can have a little bit longer life, I think.
Yeah. And the thing to remember about a lot of that older type that we're referencing, like, that wasn't actually type yet. Most of it was just, lettering styles. Like in all those alphabet books that I have, those are just kind of like reference guides for painters to be like, hey, you can use this kind of lettering on a building.
Right. Like something.
So it wasn't like super
something kind of like this. This is Nikki Villagomez. She's like the Jacob or whatever. She's on the show next week, but this is a whole book of a bunch of signs that are old, images. Yeah,
I love those Louise Philly books. Do you have any of her stuff?
I do at home.
Those are just packed with beautiful signs. But yeah, when people were doing those alphabets in those books, they weren't considering like how it was going to look at like 8 point on your monitor or something like that. It was just like a big, beautiful letter. So we're trying to take the beauty and the aesthetic from those fonts and convert it for like a modern purpose. So there's a little bit of give and take from the physical world and the digital world on that.
So this is one of your faces, and this kind of takes it down so that you're showing how things go all the way low, and I don't remember which typeface this is.
Oh, this is Alchemist.
Okay. I guess this is just all the faces, all the different.
Yeah, it's all the characters that are included in it. There's over 500 characters in that one.
Ooh. Okay, so all right, so Daniel he says, I like Motor City. I like the Motor City font. Any variants, italic, bold italics, and demi. So with something like Motor City, it's really kind of chunky. I think, and it's all caps, I think. Isn't it kind of hard to do italic in something like that?
Yeah, doing like a true italic in that one would be a definite challenge. I thought about just adding like an oblique version to where I kind of just like slant the baseline like 15 degrees or 20 degrees just to see how it would look. That's what I did with Skyward. There's an oblique version of it. It's not like a true italic, but
right. Do you know the difference between oblique and italic?
Yeah, oblique is cheating.
No, do you know the oblique, the characters like a letter A? I know just because I make my kids memorize these things. Not my children, but because I don't have any of those. But anyway, you know what I mean. But they are when they slant, they actually resemble the Roman character if it's italic, and if they're oblique, they don't. So like the A, you'll turn from like with the, an A like this to an A like that.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, maybe nobody else knew that, or maybe everybody didn't. I'm just an idiot. Okay.
But yeah, I do have ideas for variants down the line. I'd like to do something to where it would be like a layered type system to where it would look like it was beveled, like metal, to where you can add shadows and highlights and things like that, just because it would be really fitting for that style. And then I wanted to do like an outline or like a drop shadow version. As far as different weights and everything go, I think that one would be a pretty easy one to do the interpolation on, just because it's a lot of like very straight lines and pure curves, and I don't think it would be too difficult to go from like a light to like an extra bold or something. But italics, I don't really know yet.
What about like an inline, or titling or something with something that's like Motor City?
Doing an inline might be a little more difficult. I would have to play with that one a little bit. I don't know. I did an inline for Skyward, and that one worked really well because it was so geometric, and that I did that one from a typographic standpoint. It's not technically correct because like the crossbars are the same width as like the vertical strokes, and you're supposed to like shrink the horizontal strokes just slightly for it to appear optically correct. But it actually looks better being that they're all the same for inlines, because otherwise your inline would get like too narrow in certain spots.
Right. So
that one was intentional with that. But with Motor City, and it has like the different varying weights to it and different stress and contrast, that it might be a little tricky to do that. But the outline one would be super easy to develop, I think.
All right. So Andre from Portugal, love that we got a bunch of people, or three people from Europe. So yay. Thank you, Europeans, for joining in. he says, hello, Jason Cool Fonts. Have you thought of adding a way to test the fonts on the website? It may help to decide to buy the font or not, I think. Like to be like quick type or something like that. Is it coming?
Yes. Well, that's kind of a funny story. We hired a guy back in August to develop a type tester for us. And I wanted to have it available to show all the guys that were interested in becoming vendors at Carmel Type at the Letterheads meet. And it wasn't really ready. And it was kind of a bummer because we paid all this money to have it done. And ever since then, it's been kind of a struggle to get it up on the website. We have a couple fonts on the website do show it currently. I think Lastra has it. Lumber Company might, maybe Luxus, like some of the original ones we had up there, Railroad Company possibly. But as far as rolling it out site-wide yet, we haven't done that just because the amount of steps it takes to add a font into this type tester system built, it's really difficult. It's like going through the matrix to figure out where to put this thing. So yes, I would love to have a type tester on every page, and it's something that I thought was important from day one, was to have something where you can try before you buy. So hopefully that will be implemented soon, like really soon, because I wanted it since we opened.
So this is another great question. Brian asks, is there any particular reason you and or Carmel haven't released your fonts on the most well-known font distributor? You can read it. Like MyFont or fonts.com.
Yeah, Drew and I had a long discussion about that. We would obviously be able to get in front of a much larger audience. They have a way bigger crowd than we ever could hope to have. I don't even know how many people subscribe to their newsletters and visit their homepage a day, but it's got to be an astronomical amount. But we want to be more of like a boutique shop to where you can only get it from us, kind of like how House Industries operates. Mm-hmm. House doesn't sell anywhere but House. And I think that lends a certain amount of like exclusivity to your product if you're only selling it in one place and you can't just get it everywhere. So with our vendors, we have contracts that they can either sign exclusively with us or they can sell their fonts elsewhere as well. And one of our guys, Jerry Berg, is doing that. He's selling through Creative Market as well. But he's finding that he's not selling that much there. Creative Market seems to be a place where people don't want to spend very much on fonts. Like I notice on their homepage all the time, they'll have bundles like, 200 fonts for $10. Right. Like, really? Like, you're not going to charge any more than like $1 a font? Like, come on. Right. So he's having trouble selling at $30 there, whereas on our website, that's considered like a lower price point, and he's selling a lot more on our site. So I think it's a totally different kind of market when you're doing it privately as opposed to going out there. Because I know we looked into fonts.com and MyFonts, and I think that they wanted to take like a really big percentage of your sales. So you'd get a lot of sales potentially, maybe, but you're also competing with, hundreds of thousands of other fonts for the limelight there. It's not like on our website where there's only like 20 fonts. You have to sort through an infinite number of sans serifs to find, your sans serif. And by that point, people are like, oh, screw it, I'll just go find it somewhere else. Right.
And Brian says it's 50%, like from a place like that. And Daniel asked about Font House, something like that. But again, I think you've kind of explained why. But I think Creative Market is it's great for the consumer, not so great for the maker. For fonts, I think. Yeah. Otherwise, I think it's good for smaller things that don't take you that long. But a font takes you so long that it almost feels like I don't know.
Well, it depends, too, because a lot of the stuff that sells really well there is like kind of those messy brush scripts. And I feel like with that kind of stuff, where the intent is supposed to look, like quick and rushed, and, it might be something you can develop in a day. It might not be something you spend months on. So to them, it may be worth it. But, when with Alchemist, I worked on that for about 6 months. I mean, I started it almost a year ago when I was doing the original sketches for it, when it used to be called Monarch. But I found out there was another typeface called Monarch already, so I couldn't use that. But yeah, that took a long time. So for me to go on Creative Market or something, only sell for like $10, I'd be like, man, I'm really, shortchanging myself by not getting what I think it's really worth.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the process of kind of putting one of these things. And I think you've kind of given me, here's the process for Alchemist, and then we'll look at some of the other stuff for Alchemist as well. So what, like, you are a paper and pencil kind of guy. So how many of these and how big are these?
Well, these are just standard 8.5 by 11 papers that I was just drawing the rough sketches on. The one that's all the way on the left that's kind of buried under the other two papers was my first sketches. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, it's kind of like more condensed. It's not really as refined. And then the second one is when I digitized that more condensed alphabet, and I was working with doing different variants. Like you can see the longer swash on the tail of the Q, and like adding the ball terminal on the S, and certain other places like the C. And all the way on the right is where I arrived proportionally for the finished font for some of those letters up there. And then I was working with doing different numbers where I wanted to do like lining numerals
and then old style. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
do you know that we can read better old style numerals? You probably knew that. I mean, I'm talking to the choir here.
No, I actually didn't know that there was any kind of like scientific difference between the two, like for how well people would read them.
So think about like a book in a math book or science where there's a lot of numbers. If you want it to read without having upper and lower, having ascenders and descenders, you use an old style figures. If you don't, it'll just kind of be a blocky, and then without having that other line, it looks like your leading's off, and then you have to rearrange your leading line by line, which is really a pain. So using those old style figures, and that really helps.
I didn't know that, but that's interesting. It's probably also because like it keeps your eye needing to focus on something that's moving up and down a little bit, so you're paying more attention to what you're reading.
Right. We really read things as blocks, as a whole word. So we don't really read each letter. So you can actually mix up the ones in between. If your first letter and your last letter are the same, you can actually, and Cornell or some C university did some test. And anyway.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That's like one of those like memes that goes around from your aunt or whatever. Like, can you read this? If you can, you're special. And like only 1 out of 100 people can do it. Even though something that's like
I got it before it was a meme though. So I have the study or whatever, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
and that you can only read. And that people like read like the top half of type more than they read the bottom half. So if you cover up the bottom half of a line, you could probably still read what it says, but not if you do it the other way around.
Right.
Which is interesting too.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I'm trying to think about if there's any. Okay, so I don't know if we have lots of. We had that other one with the. But here's kind of the end and the promo images. This is something else you're kind of testing out, right? Is what kind of promo images you're showing that would help people buy, right?
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest experiments so far is seeing what kind of imagery people respond to. Like for Alchemist, I went with like a very cinematic approach, something that looks very like movie title-ish. To whereas like with Noel's most recent release that we did, Fargo, that was just, it's white letters, blue background, and that's it. You just see the font for what it is and it's right out in the open. With Alchemist, it's more like an experience looking through the thing. So it seems like people are actually responding better to the really plain and simplistic imagery though. They just want to know what the font looks like. And that's what makes them buy. It's not really all this flashy imagery that you spend a lot of time on that really kind of pulls them through. It's nice for stuff like Behance where people like a big, robust presentation, but anywhere else, it doesn't work as well.
So, all right. So take us through the process. I think you gave me images for Motor City. So I'm going to pop up the first image. Your stuff's awesome. And people are like, very nice. Awesome. So, okay. So here's the first one.
Yeah. And I think the other one I sent you is just the back half of the alphabet. I think that's just like T through Z and some numbers.
Somebody might want to see that. So I'm going to pop it in there.
Yeah.
So you start again, 8.5 by 11, but you're on grid paper here.
Yeah, and there was something that I learned from watching a video. I don't know how many people are in here are part of that sign painting support group on Facebook or follow that at all. But that's
support group. It sounds sort of like your.
I know it sounds like AA or something, but yeah, there was this video that was posted and quickly pulled because apparently they didn't want it up there for whatever reason. But Ed Bengat was giving a type critique to some people, and he was saying that any letter can be drawn in a 9x9 grid. It's like any letter of the alphabet. It's like by using this grid, you can define proportion and size, your different contrast and everything like that. And it was amazing watching him go through it and just learning that this grid process it's so simple, but it works so well. And you can change and adapt that grid for different stuff if you want extended type or you want condensed or anything like that. So for this one, I didn't do a square grid. I did it to where it's a little wider. Motor City is like slightly extended, so you can see that it's wider than it is taller.
Right.
Like I think the A there, I ended up widening up quite a bit in that sketch. I think that was way too tight. Same with the L, like was a little short. So these were just like basic characters that I was roughing in. And when I was developing this one, it's very reliant on the same elements from letter to letter. So like the I is the same as the stem of the H, and then you just duplicate that and you put a crossbar in and you have your H. And, it's also the left side of the E and the F and the B and the L. And you can use that element over and over through these characters. And that makes it a lot easier and quicker to go through it. But then your rounded characters and the ones that have the diagonals and it start to get a little more difficult and convoluted as you go. But yeah, that one was pretty reliant on different elements, whereas Alchemist was a whole different experience because there's so many alternates and different styles to each letter. So that one you couldn't really borrow much from other characters because everything was almost custom in there.
So it looks like maybe Railroad Co. Also is similar to Motor City, where looks like you could borrow some parts.
Yeah, definitely. And that one's really heavy and wide. That one I don't think I could even really do a lowercase for without it being the same height as the capitals because it's so thick. Other people have asked me, like, have you ever even thought of doing that? I was like, not really, because every train that I've ever seen, which inspired this, is always all capitals for what it was doing.
Right.
So I kind of just wanted to keep it true to the inspiration because lowercase would have never even been used in this kind of situation.
So Brian wants to know, do you always start with graph paper? Because he's a graph paper kind of guy too.
Yeah, these days I definitely do. But a lot of the time I'm making my own grids in Illustrator first. So I have the proportions I want kind of set up letter by letter. And that makes it a lot easier than having to eye it and count out each number of glyphs or each number of squares in your grid each time. So if you have this kind of standard, say you have like a 4x8 block that you want to do, you can just copy and paste that in Illustrator and make, 10 letters a page or 20 letters a page, whatever you want to do.
And you can even add, so Dan asks, what about the arcs and the golden ratio guidelines? And actually in Illustrator, you can make curved guidelines so that you could actually use that as well if you really wanted to.
Do you mean like the spiral tool to where you can kind of like have this kind of diminishing curve that goes down? I've used that a few times. I think I used it for a couple of the characters in Alchemist, like the A that has the ball terminal in it and the H to where they have those kind of curly spiral ball terminals.
But you can actually make a grid line with that.
I did not know that.
Yes, you've got to do. I'll have to send you a link to how to do that. But was like when I could make angles and curved lines as guides was a game changer. Not that I'm making any typefaces, but it still was really cool.
Yeah, I got to try that. That'd be cool to know.
Anything, any stroke, I think you can just make guide. Anyway, I'll send you a link or I'll do it again. And somebody I'm sure in here knows how to do it. Scott,
yeah.
Don't you know how to do that? Okay.
Probably.
I know, I'm sure. Command +5. So Command 5. There you go. Yeah, and he says yes. Okay, so try that, Jason.
Right. Yeah, I will.
It's a game changer. Yeah. Just right click any path and set make a guide. All right, thanks, Christopher. Thanks.
That too. All right, cool.
Or convert to outline, whatever. Anyway, I do think those are awesome. You're always learning new stuff on design.
So there's a million ways to do it, and I'm doing everything wrong.
but so maybe that's where the support group could come in. You know, you guys can share some of those things. Okay, so I actually put one of the railroad ones up also. So then again, you're kind of deciding. So what have you found works good, or is it really the typeface that really depends on what the promo image really should be? So Alchemist was very much like a movie kind of thing. What about Railroad? So this one is another railroad image, and this says at Penn Station, which I just love it. I love the colors.
Yeah, Railroad was directly inspired by a trip that I took to a place called the Steamtown Museum, which was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And they have all of these gorgeous old trains, and the lettering along the side of all the passenger cars and everything was super extended because there was these really long cars, and you only had a little bit of space either above or below the windows. So the letters kind of fit the placement. You know, it needed to have that kind of aesthetic, and I always was really drawn to those letters. So that's why I decided to make something like that. I haven't seen many display faces that are that wide out there available on the market. And I have one of those photo lettering ink one-line books. I don't know if you have one of those, but it's like 1,000 pages of fonts that was developed by photo lettering. And I looked through the whole book, and they had maybe one or two fonts that was that wide and that heavy. So I was like, well, there's not really much stuff like this that exists, so I might as well just give it a go. And then afterwards, of course, I found that there's always more on the internet than you know about. And there are fonts that look sort of like it, you know, but it's still not the same sort of thing. But
well, and I think you were saying somebody sent you a picture from, I can't remember who it was you said, but they sent you a picture and you're like, oh my gosh, is very similar. They asked you if it was inspired by that, and you were like, no, I've never been there.
Yeah, it was Scott Fuller. He sent me a picture of the old Pullman trains, and the Pullman, I guess, type that they used for all their cars and everything looked very similar to Railroad Company. And I mean, I didn't see it beforehand, and it wasn't directly inspired by it, but I mean, it's cool in a way because I hit the nail on the head, I guess, as far as the aesthetic goes for what I was going for.
Absolutely. Okay, so Brian, different Brian Brubaker, TT Supply Company. And I don't think that's TT, like maybe it's True Type. Anyway,
I think it's Tried and True, right?
I know, but I was just being funny. Anyway, I should not work on being funny because I am not funny. My husband tells me. Is Drew the only one producing fonts in glyphs?
Yes, I don't do any of the development.
I
think that's what he's asking, is that he's the only one that's doing the development end. But yeah, all of my stuff I just send off as vector alphabets to him, and then I kind of I know he's excellent with like all the kerning and everything like that, but I have him send me a couple different rounds, and we go pair by pair and make sure things look good, especially for like those problem pairs like, you know, AT or like AV, to where they kind of have to be smushed together a little bit more. So we get it to a point where we both agree that it looks really nice. But it's something that I'm hoping to learn within the next year, is to just buy my own copy of glyphs and learn how to do it. I'm not great with learning software. I find it really frustrating sometimes, but it's something that I feel like needs to be done and could double our productivity. So it's on the list. It's something I hope to do soon. So
with other people, are they also sending it to Drew, and then Drew is making those? So how does that
work? Actually.
Okay. So they're all done already, glyph wise.
Yeah, all of Noel's and Gary's were actually developed by our other contributor, Jerry, because he used to do the development for their fonts on a website called Artist Fonts, but that website is no longer functioning or working. So he did Calliope and Bronwyn, Lasso and Fargo, California Script, Backfire, all those that are on our website were done by him. Cool.
Okay. So Brian Brubaker, it's just because I have a small bladder, and so I always am thinking about the bathroom. So the TT. Sorry. Okay. So RoboFont, Scott Biersack says, I don't know, is he saying?
A lot of people love that. Yeah, that's a different program to use for doing development in fonts. I've never tried it. I've never tried any of the softwares, so I don't really have a preference or something that I'm leaning towards. I was just going to go after glyphs because that's what Drew uses, and I figured it would be the easiest for him to just teach me if necessary.
Yeah. Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I have a few more questions, and I know we didn't get exactly through step by step, but pretty much we did. So you're wearing a ton more hats. What has gone by the wayside? So are you designing less? Are you So
yeah, definitely taking on less projects. I used to like load myself up with like 5 to 7 projects a week and just try to really take on as much stuff as I can. But now with Carmel, it's not only the font development and the design of the fonts, it's doing the promotional imagery, it's posting to social media, it's following up on emails and making sure orders are taken care of. And there's a lot more behind the scenes stuff to do with Carmel than I originally had thought there would be. So it's taken a lot more time out of my day daily, but it's something that I still really enjoy doing. It's not like it's a hassle to do it, but it doesn't give me as much time to do like branding projects or commission lettering or t-shirts or anything like that anymore. So I'm only taking on the stuff I really want to work on these days.
Okay, so I said about you wearing more hats. And Brian thought that literally, I think you were wearing more hats these days. Anyway,
no.
Okay, but that's hilarious. I wasn't trying to be funny then, but okay. So, Mike wants to know, are you guys going to restock those caramel shirts? Carmel. Sorry, man. I just keep messing it up.
Yeah. Mr. Hypergiant down there in the chat is the guy who prints them for us. That's Hypergiant Industries. That's where we do all of our printing.
Shane?
From. Yeah.
Is that what you said it was?
Yeah. That's my other wife. Shane's my other wife. He's my good buddy, and he's going to be printing them up for us again soon. Like I said earlier, with the type tester thing, we put a lot of money into that, and that's been kind of draining the extra, income that we've had from that. But now that that's all paid off, we can start doing physical products again.
Could you do a pre-order kind of thing?
We thought about it. I didn't know how that would go. I'm always kind of like on the fence myself about how I feel about pre-orders and Kickstarters and things like that, to where you ask for money before you have something. I almost feel like I don't know, like you're demanding more of your audience than you should.
Yeah, maybe, but you kind of have a reputation. It's not like we're going to be like, Jason's going to run away with like $20 or something.
Oh, yeah.
But you should talk to Mitch Shepard. I'll send you his contact information. And because he did these were pre-orders. And so, but I mean, I was happy to, maybe that would be okay. And then that way you don't have to put so much, because it is a big, to put out the funds to get them, and then not sure, and then you have to make sure you have places to store them and stuff. So I don't know. Would you guys pre-order?
Crickets. One guy.
Oh, Mike said yes. I would order. See, hell yeah, from Scott Biersack. Okay, so I want to show
enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we hope. I'm hoping to have some for Creative South. I'm not going to be like a vendor or have a booth or anything like that, but I'm sure I'd like to give away a couple to some people that are down there, you included.
Oh, well, cool. Well, Drew has finally joined us. Thank you. Glad to have you. Anyway,
hey,
we've been talking about you a lot. All good things, just so you know.
You're an hour late, Drew.
Hopefully, anyway, so
West Coast time.
Yeah, the math was not his strong point. He can do glyphs. Okay, so I want to talk about some of your work. So, because one of the things we talked about on the side on our test was, you're doing all these other hat wearing. That is a phrase. And you're still designing, and you're taking on less clients, but really that's where you're having the fun, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's nice doing only the work that you really want to do. Because now I'm not taking on projects that I like before I had to take on just because I needed to pay bills or anything like that. The better Carmel goes and the better lettering library goes, like it just supplements my income that much more. So it's just like this passive income that's coming in week after week, month after month. So I don't need to do a certain project if I don't really feel like it's going to be something that I can put my all into. I want to make sure that every project that I do has something that I'm interested in and that I really like to deliver a beautiful final product for.
And you still love doing the design stuff. Like that's where you get your kicks and giggles.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love creating type, but it's you're a lot more strict with type to where you have to kind of act on these rules letter by letter to make a consistent alphabet. But with lettering, you could be like a lot more expressive and free with what you're drawing. So that's kind of almost liberating from working on the computer and going by these, predefined standards for your letters.
Right. Okay. So I posted an image that was the bag image. I think every bag tells a story. Can you talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, that was for Rickshaw Bag Works. They're a bag company out of San Francisco, California. And they've been one of my best clients. They've hired me for 7 or 8 different projects over the last year. And I've done stuff for bags, for T-shirts, for signage, for labels, little logos that get put inside of their bags. And it's been cool being included that thoroughly into somebody's brand. It's been really interesting seeing how they took all of my stuff and incorporated it brand wide. And I don't know if anybody's seen this thing on Kickstarter they did, but they started those reflective bags. Do you see that? It's called Amazing Reflective Tweed is what they call it. And it's this fabric that reflects light off of their backpacks or handbags or anything like that. And they patented it and came up with their own thing, and that I got to do like the patch design for it, and that was one of those projects that went over huge on Kickstarter, especially like in a city like San Francisco where like so many people are biking or walking, and it's not like here. Yeah,
right. Brian, man, he is on it. He's all about he's a Google man.
Yeah, he's quick.
Yeah. He is quick. He hears it before we say it almost. So here's another one that was Dead and Company. So was this for the Grateful Dead, or is this just a company that's...
Well, Dead and Company is Grateful Dead teaming up with John Mayer. So it's like a collaborative band, I guess. And Dave Smith actually did the Dead and Company lettering. So I got to use some of his lettering, which was pretty sweet. And this was going to be a tour T-shirt for them. I think that... that one didn't end up getting used, though, because I think they lost the contract for the merchandising. Like Warner, Live Nation, and a couple other big merchandising groups were all competing for the rights for their merch. And I think the one that I was commissioned for didn't end up getting the final say in it.
So Kat has a great idea. She says, do some running T-shirts that are reflective. Tell the bag people, or you use their technology and make running T-shirts. Like that would be wicked awesome. Your designs on like a reflective running T-shirt, which looks normal, but then it reflects and saves lives.
Yeah, I wonder if that would even be I mean, the tweed in the bags is probably like heavyweight material that they have with the reflective material. I wonder if they can incorporate that into, it'd be like a weight vest.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay, so I think
the printing guy says it's possible down there.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, Shane, how can you do that? You should start it on Kickstarter and make a lot of money.
And you can give some of the credit to Kat because it was her idea.
Yeah.
So I think boogers, it moved too quickly. So the Rickshaw Bag, I did. I think maybe that was the badge that you had done. I was like late coming on doing those.
That one was for a T-shirt and for like a tote bag. I don't know if I sent you the badge thing I did for the tweed. I don't think.
Okay.
But yeah, that one was pretty fun to do. They wanted me to just do like this kind of ornate old sign, and so I added all these banners and little flourishes and strings in there. The string was supposed to be like, what was coming from the sewing machine up top, so you could see like the needles are like behind there. That it's kind of like looping through the eye of it. I don't know if you can see it on top of it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It's beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to go back. So then this one is, I didn't show your wedding invitation, but I want to show that. So I have to go back and get that. But, and then I'm going to do the Wu-Tang thing. So, okay. So that one.
Oh, the Hard Times one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was for a band called the Wild Feathers. I hadn't heard of them, but they had, I guess, like an album or song that was called Hard Times that they wanted some lettering done by. And I just really liked the way that TH ligature kind of thing worked there. And you didn't even really need like the dot over. Just kind of implied. And I think it just kind of worked pretty well for that one. It was one of those ones that I just kind of did like on the fly, and it just ended up working. It was not a lot of planning or anything like that.
Well, I guess I didn't copy the right link for the Wu-Tang thing. Anyway, it's on your site of this episode. It's underneath if people want to see it. They can just go to rechargingyou.com and then search for Jason Carne. You'll get all of them, but this will be the one that'll be on top. And that image is there. So I do want to, I got to do the Lynyrd Skynyrd because, again, I'm in Alabama and sweet home Alabama. So I love this one. I thought this was really cool. What's the story behind this one?
Yeah, Live Nation commissioned me to work on a couple pieces for Skynyrd, but this was probably my favorite of the bunch that I submitted. They wanted something that resembled the shape and the lettering style of their logo, but was a little more decorative and elaborate. So I went with this treatment. Everything was all custom lettered here. And then I used some pinstriping brushes or something for the background. I think I had a pinstriping brush set.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm
doing 2 more designs for them this week, actually.
Ooh, do you listen to Lynyrd Skynyrd when you're working on it?
I do have some Skynyrd records over on my record player over there. I don't know if you can see over there. I got a record player.
Well, I'll see it in like 5 minutes when it actually catches up.
I don't know.
I see.
Yeah. I'll put on some Skynyrd later today in your honor.
Awesome. Sweet. Crank it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's 2 more, and this is probably the best thing you've done all year is marry Melissa, right?
That's right.
Or all your life, maybe. And she's going to be at Creative South with you too, so you get to see the woman behind the man. So so this is the invitation, and it was absolutely gorgeous, beautiful invitation. So there's one part, and then here is the other part. Did I use the same thing? I don't know. I think I might have used the same one twice. Looks like the same one.
Yeah, that's the inside of the envelope and like the very top of the invite there.
Bookers, I have it. Hang on a second.
Okay.
I have mine, and I saved it all because...
Oh, yeah. You have one going.
I'm a geek. Anyway, I can... Maybe I'll do it. I don't think you can see any addresses on this side. But the back was really cool, too. Oh, I should probably see what I'm looking at. So, can you guys see? Yeah, there we go. So, everything, all of this was hand-lettered?
No, a lot of that actually isn't hand lettering, but it was a lot of learning with Illustrator. Before that, I barely ever used Illustrator. I just hated the program.
But
the
this
illustrations
looks like a
in the upper corners. Yeah, that is right. FM Boliar Pro. I could type out the name of that.
No, that's good.
Really great font.
But so what about the images in the corners?
Yeah, the images in the corners were actually engravings or illustrations by Stephen Noble. And I'm sure a lot of people, if they're on Behance, will know who Stephen Noble is. He's one of the best in the business in regards to that stuff. Like, he did the official Sam Adams logo, like the Napa County. He did the new Wild Turkey Bourbon logo. He's done really big-time stuff, and he let me license those images for my wedding invite, which was really cool.
Oh, that was really cool. And I liked how it was in the envelope, was,
Oh, yeah. It was letterpressed in the envelope. A fine press did that. guy named Matthew printed that from a fine press, and he actually partners with Shane and Hypergiant to do all their letterpress work. And he did really gorgeous work on this. The front is actually 4 different passes of letterpress. The illustrations were done separately from the rest of the gold because it was too fine to do all at one time. So you had to register 4 different plates of letterpress to make that look like that.
So I'll show you where I live. Nobody will probably, but I think it's hilarious because my husband's last name is Smith, John Smith. And I just think it's hilarious because it says Mr. and Mrs. Gibbs. And he always says he gets $100 every time somebody calls him Mr. Gibbs, like the pest control guy calls him Mr. Gibbs all the time. But it's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, yeah. So, Skylar Chuback did all that stuff. I sent it to my penman buddy out in Utah, and he does ridiculously beautiful, like traditional penmanship and calligraphy. Yes.
So Drew asked as well. So that's what prompted me. So I know we're over. So I want to share a couple ways for you to get in touch with Jason, and not on Twitter, please, because he's not going to respond. But really, he has 2 places: Among Villains, and that's what his Twitter handle is. And then on Instagram, it's also Among Villains, or you can also reach him or Drew, I guess, at Carmel Type Co. And you still do lettering library. So just give us a little idea of what lettering library is for somebody who doesn't know.
Yeah, lettering library. Yeah, actually, my personal Instagram is just Jason Carne. I don't have Instagram there.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, lettering library is a subscription-based or pay-as-you-go kind of platform where I upload old PDFs of lettering books, alphabets, monograms, sign painting, penmanship, all that stuff, all those old manuals and reference guides for lettering. And they're all like pre-1930. They're all like way out of copyright. They're public domain. So I take photos of each and every page, and then I combine that into a PDF so people can read and look through those. So it's only $10 a month to do that, and you get 4 books a month.
And it's just packed full of stuff for you to look at and kind of get through, and you can zoom in, so it's not like it's completely out there. So sorry, and I'm trying to click. So jasoncarne.com, carmeltype.co, and then letteringlibrary.com.
Yep, that's it.
Yay. Anyway, thank you. It's always good. We really went over, boy. But thank you so much, Jason. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you for having me again. Am I your only 4-time? I
believe so. I believe you have
a new world record. There we go.
New world record. That's right. And Andre said that he was happy that you wrote Amor on your wedding invitation in Portuguese.
Oh, well, I was actually going for Latin, but
it's also Portuguese.
I did not know that.
See, we're learning.
Yeah, I did Amor Nexu, and it meant love and connection. So that's what I was going for there.
Well, good.
But maybe it means some of the same things in Portuguese. I don't know.
Maybe so. Well, thank you again. Make sure you guys follow Jason and sign up for Lettering Library, especially if you're a letterer and you want some good, constant inspiration, because these books that Jason's found, he's gone and he's searched, and he's actually spent a lot of money doing this. And then now he's sharing that with you.
Here's one of the ones that just came up this week. That's an old Italian calligraphy book that I found for only like $30. I got a really good deal on that one. Usually some of these I have to spend like, $150, $200. And here's this other one that I just got this week too, which I'm really excited to put up for next month. It's an old jewelers and engravers catalog with a bunch of crazy monograms and border designs and scroll work.
Whoa.
That one's going to be cool.
That's awesome. So Andre also said that carne means flesh in Portuguese. Did you know that?
I knew it meant meat in Spanish. I didn't know that there was also flesh.
Oh yeah, carne. Yeah.
Yeah. Carne, yeah.
Yeah, now I get it. Meat. I like flesh better, actually. It seems a little bit,
I don't know. I don't think either are too flattering. Jason Flesh or Jason Meat seems a little strange.
That's true. That's true. That's very true. Well,
Jason Meat.
So next week, Jason, you'll probably want to tune in too if you have time. But I'm having Nikki Villagomez, and she is going to be talking about her book, and it's by Hal. It's not by Hal. It's all by her. But Hal published it, which I think is great. And I just had a couple of, I mean, it's beautiful, like old, what do you call these? Ghost signs kind of in there. Yeah. So she's got a bunch of ghost signs and then manhole covers and some old papers falling all out.
Yeah, that looks cool.
Is that
something that's out yet, or that's still
yes, this is out. This is out. And I've actually had her on the show. Like, she was, I think, my 6th or 7th guest from the get-go, and it was like one of the ones that originally got deleted. And so anyway,
so she's an OG then.
She's for sure. So she but there's just some like beautiful type in here. And so if you haven't ever picked up the book, you should. And just she's just going out and like, she's shot graffiti and shot all kinds of stuff. So we'll have better, and I probably won't have to hold the book up next week. But
yeah, I'm not very good at graffiti. I tried it once and got arrested. Well, it was like the week after I turned 18.
Well,
I was a felon a week after I turned 18.
I think she's just shooting pictures of it. I don't think she's making her own graffiti. But
I was rightfully arrested for it. It looked terrible.
Well, I'd love to see a picture of it. Do you have it?
No. I to get out of it being a felony and to get it dropped to a misdemeanor, I went back and repainted the guy's wall the next day.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
He didn't know what
I'm a vandal with a heart.
Gonna be. Yeah, for sure, and a conscience, right?
Yeah.
I did this yesterday and it sucked so bad. I'm going to paint over it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Thanks for coming. And thank you guys all for coming next week, same time, which is 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific. Drew, thanks. We did totally give you lots of props today. So glad you could come. And thank you for my best person over in the chat that always gives me my links that I didn't even know were coming, but he somehow knows. He's got a way with Google. That's Brian Yon. So thank you, Brian, for doing it. And so tune in next week to have Nikki. And Jason, thank you again for always being inspirational and just being awesome. And I'm excited to hug your neck in April. So at Creative South.
Likewise.
So, thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for everything. See you later, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, and if you ever want to connect with me, it's Diane@designrecharge.org or Diane@rechargingyou.com, and sign up at rechargingyou.com. Thanks. See you next week.